What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of Bleeding BNG. Well, your boy was boosting the ground. You know how I like to do it. Your boy was boosting the ground for yet another training camp session, day 5 of Commanders Training Camp 2025, just like I was for day 4. But today was a little different. Today was a little special. The guys were able to put football pads on for the first time. They wore full pads. They had helmets, shoulder pads, and bottoms on today. And you know that can make or break a couple of guys. That can make or break a couple of guys. A couple of guys were looking forward to today, and a couple of guys were dreading today. But before we get too deep into this episode, you already know what I'm gonna say. Be sure to comment. Be sure to like. Be sure to subscribe. On the road to 3,000 subscribers, and I can't do it without your help. I can't do it without your help. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn your notification on so you're not missing any of this content on your Washington Commanders. And without further ado, man, let's get into this video. So like I said, the first day of full pads for the Commanders. So I knew yesterday when yesterday's session went almost 2 hours, a little over normal, in that 100-degree heat. I knew yesterday that today's practice was going to be short. And I started to contemplate if I wanted to drive out there. You know, some of y'all were like, damn, Jaylen, you went out there back-to-back days. What you got to tell me, bro? No, I just take this really serious, and I love my Washington Commanders. So I say that to say today's practice was not super long. It wasn't super long at all. And actually, to start, Dan Quinn did a couple of guys some favors. Like I said, some people were looking forward to this day, and then some people were dreading this day. And a couple of people that were dreading this day, in my mind, or what I would think the people that were dreading this day, are the veterans. So what he did, being Dan Quinn, being the DQ that he is, he gave several veterans veteran rest days off. Those veterans were Laramie Tunsil, Cleveland Farrell, Marshawn Lattimore, Von Miller, and Zach Ertz. So none of those guys participated in practice, and one of those guys isn't like the rest. But I'm going to let you guys figure out which one I'm talking about. But we're going to talk about everything that we did see on the field today. So the theme for today has something to do with the defense like it did yesterday. I told you guys coming out of yesterday, one of my biggest takeaways is that the Commanders are fully capable of having a top 5 cornerback room coming out of the 2025 season. Now, I don't want to say that is the case going into the season, but when you replace Emmanuel Forbes and Benjamin St-Juste and Michael Davis with Marshawn Lattimore, Mikey Sanders-Still, and Trey Amos, you can only go but up. So the theme of yesterday was the defense, and I'm going to stick with the defense today because I'm going to go out here and say it now. I know I was hyping up that cornerback room. So now when I'm speaking about another position on the defense, it's going to be like, damn, Jaylen, you got the Commanders sounding like the 1985 Bears or the 2000 Ravens. I'm not saying that by any means, but you know, my eyes never lie. I'm going to give you the most raw, uncut, and unfiltered analysis on what I saw in Ashburn today, and I saw the defensive line dominate the offensive line today. Now, a lot of today's practice, it went on for just over an hour. It was a lot of scenario-based, circumstantial-based, drilling and things of that nature. So they did run fits, filling in 9-on-7. They did some goal line work as well, and they did team one-on-one, 2s-on-2s, 3s-on-3s, and things of that nature. So the theme of today's practice is that the defensive line dominated. Now, I know you've heard that before, especially in training camp, when we talked about the Alabama wall, when we talked about Chase Young, when we talked about Montez Sweat. Well, I'm here to tell you right now that the defensive line kicked the offense's face in today, especially in the run game, because there were some positives on the offense that I'll touch later in the video. But I'm going to go out here and say it now. This defensive line has all the potential in the world to make a complete 180 from what we saw last season when they were abysmal stopping the run. It's the biggest reason why John Allen isn't here, because we've gotten bigger, faster, stronger on that defensive line, and John Allen, who played at 280, 285 pounds last year, was not a part of that bigger, faster, stronger specimen that Adam Peters wanted to construct this roster with. Because when you see a guy like Javon Kinlaw, who's getting all the hype He's getting all the hype, and rightfully so, because he's built like he's built like the Titanic. Like, he's built like a cruise ship. Like, comparing him to a car isn't doing him any justice. Yesterday, I said that Javon Kinlaw made Deron Payne look like a regular-sized human. Today, after watching him for another day, no, he makes him look small. He makes him look small. And as I was mentioning, Javon Kinlaw, his size is getting all the acclaim and all the hype, rightfully so. Rightfully so. His biceps are the size of my fucking quads, rightfully so. But I would be remiss to not mention Deatrich Wise being built like a damn Mack truck playing the defensive end position. Deatrich Wise is built like a sprinter van playing the defensive, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I'm dead serious when I say this. I was looking at Deatrich Wise after about his third consecutive rep where he set the edge and helped stuff the run. I was like, why does he have a neck roll on in 2025, right? And then I got closer and realized, nah, his traps are just that goddamn big. His traps are just that goddamn big. Out there wearing a 91, looking like a black Ryan Kerrigan. Him and Josh Connerly were having some battles today that he won a lot of in the run game. He won a lot of those in the run game. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that. But when they did go to the pass games for the few or passing reps for the few reps that Josh Connerly did get with the first team, he still made a Deatrich Wise on a couple of those. So that goes along the lines of what we heard about both players. We heard about how, Deatrich Wise wasn't necessarily a supreme pass rusher, but he's going to be a hard, nitty, first and second down defensive end. He showed that today. We heard how Josh Connerly, some people regarded him as an elite offensive tackle prospect and things of that nature. Everybody said that he needed to improve on his play strength because the footwork was there. The lateral agility was there. We saw that today. Now, pardon me if I go back to my notes, but the starting defense on the defensive line was Deatrich Wise, Dorrance Armstrong, Javon Kinlaw, and Deron Payne, with our starting backers being Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, and then our defensive backs being Trey Amos, Mikey Sanders still, Will Harris, Quan Martin, with Marshawn Lattimore sitting out. And that starting defense looked like it was Sundays. Looked like it was Sundays, coming off of 2 practices ago, having Jayden Daniels throw 3 interceptions. And then yesterday's practice, I told you, it wasn't a win for the offense by any means. It wasn't a win by the offense by any means. And while I think that the offense had more wins today, it's clear to see why Joe Witt and Dan Quinn have been talking this defense up. And Adam Peters are talking this roster up and saying that they're better than last year. Because it's evident on the defensive side of the ball. It's evident on the defensive side of the ball. Some of the things that I noticed is that Tyler Owens was actually getting a lot of reps with the ones as well. No, he wasn't that first safety. Will Harris was, but they shared about the equal amount of reps with the first team defense. Tyler Owens blew up a couple of guys. While they weren't going to the ground with it being the first day in pads, they were thudding. And Tyler Owens, I think he missed the message. He was thudding and some more. He was trying to take guys to the ground. And honestly, the biggest offensive star out of the day, not named Jayden Daniels, was Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. And Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt and Tyler Owens had a couple of battles today. In goal line. First, in the team drill when they were moving up and down the field, Ja'Cory tried to cut back. And while they weren't going to the ground, if they were, I'm telling you now, Tyler Owens would have killed Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. He helped him. He eased up because he was his teammate, but the pass was popping. And I think that Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt remembered that because in that goal line drill, him and Tyler Owens met in the hole once again, and Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt was the one that delivered the blow this time. As if he remembered what had happened to him 15 minutes ago, being struck by that damn demon Tyler Owens. I told y'all a couple of months ago that Dan Quinn and Joe Witt have a plan for unleashing Tyler Owens this season. And it's been evident in my 2 days in training camp. And while I mentioned that, the offense, they didn't have a lot of big runs at all today. The few that they did have all came courtesy of Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. So while I went on here yesterday and said that, his spot on the depth chart is closer to C-Rob than Brian Robinson's, I don't want to seem like a flip-flopper, but I might be leaning that way after today. Because not only did he outshine Brian Robinson in the reps that he got today, Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt got more reps with the ones and twos than yesterday. He simply didn't get a lot of reps with the ones and twos yesterday. It almost had me ready to come start a fantasy draft and draft Brian Robinson in all of my drafts, in all of my leagues. And that shit would have pained me to do. Because I was like, damn, this nigga's really about to get 23 to 25 touches a game. Like, I got to draft him. But after today's practice, seeing Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt burst a couple of runs, and the thing that I liked about it is that he broke out when the pads was on. Now, he's been having a hell of a camp, right? But he stood out when the pads was on. That's something that you want to see out of your running backs. That's something you want to see out of your linebackers. That's something you want to see out of your offensive linemen. And to see that come from Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt, a.k.a. Bill, that was great to see. He looked bursty today. He ran behind his pads better than I thought he did coming out of college. So seeing him implement that to his game prior to his rookie year in training camp shows that he's a student of the game, shows that the NFL leap isn't too big for him. And Ja'Cory Crosby-Merritt had a hell of a day today. For as much as the offense could have had a hell of a day today, because I told you the D-line was dominating. Javon Kinlaw's best days are ahead of him as far as being a football player. I know a lot of people were complaining and arguing we signed him to that $15 million annual average value deal when free agency first started. But let's remember, that's about tier 3 defensive tackle money. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Javon Kinlaw is going to play at least as a tier 3 defensive tackle this season. I was on here a couple of days ago saying that he outplayed All-Pro Quentin Williams in the second half of last season with the New York Jets. Go watch the film if you think I'm lying. So to see him bring that over to Washington as well, we see why Adam Peters wanted to reunite, Javon Kinlaw with himself. We see why he wanted to expound on that relationship. Now, getting back to the offense, I think the offense looked okay. They looked better. But I didn't mention yet yesterday, while, I did mention that Washington's cornerback group could be top 5. We have to keep in mind that they are going against the Commanders' wide receiver groups without Terry McLaurin, right? But that doesn't change the fact that they had them locked down. Seatbelts, straps. I was ready to give out tickets, right? And I say that to say it was more evident today that the wide receivers were missed. Because while the offense did have some positive reps, it was almost as if all of those positive reps came in the goal line situation where you're not having to force to push the ball downfield when you're playing in tighter areas and things of that nature. And while I love that we are capable of getting in the end zone, in the red zone, we had Deebo Samuel and Austin Eckler both scoring in the red zone. When you don't have that receiver that's able to push, threaten defensives downfield and, give you a vertical route tree and push the ball downfield and things of that nature, you're going to start to see defenses sitting on the sticks, putting 8 and 9 in the box and things of that nature, and starting to make Jayden Daniels throw the ball to win games. And while I have all the faith that he can do that, let's not forget that his legs make him special. His all-around game makes him special. I never want Jayden Daniels to be in a game where he's throwing the ball 55 to 60 times like we see some of these quarterbacks doing. And speaking of Jayden Daniels was the cerebral golden boy franchise quarterback that I expect him to be every time that I lay my eyes on Jayden Daniels. Now, Jayden Daniels didn't have an amazing practice yesterday. He threw that deep ball to Jalen Lane. Some people saying it's out of bounds and things of that nature. That was probably his best throw. But we can all agree that throw was magnificent. That throw was amazing, right? Well, Jayden Daniels had a couple of throws like that today. And the thing that impressed me about that today is that he did it with the pressure in his face. Because the defensive line down there got back there every time. Now, that might be an indictment on Andrew Wiley and Nick Allegretti, but remember, these guys aren't expected to be our starting right side of the offensive line. And remember, Lermy Tunsil wasn't there as well. So the two guys that are projected to be starters, and Brandon Coleman and Tyler Biadasz, probably held up the best on the offensive line. That's why I'm not ringing the alarms today, but the defensive line did whip that ass today. I'm not going to lie. defensive line definitely whipped that ass today. Yeah, it was something to see. It was something to see. Now, getting back to the offense, though, Luke McCaffrey and KJ Osborne both had big drops in the team session. And this is all more just building Terry McLaurin's case. And we're going to touch on Terry McLaurin in a minute. But KJ Osborne's drop led to a Quan Martin interception. And it's something that I missed with the defense. But since we're talking about younger players and second-year players like Luke McCaffrey and things of that nature, I'm going to go ahead and say I've been in Ashburn for 48 hours. I think that Johnny Newton might be fourth string at this very moment, y'all. I think Johnny Newton might be our fourth string defensive tackle. He's not a starter. He hasn't been out there before Payne or Kinlaw in any situation. And then for the last 2 days, at least to me, it seems as if he's getting the same amount of reps as Sheldon Day. So I don't know if you want to call him third or fourth string, but for that to be your second round pick from just last season going into his second year, I tweeted it out earlier this week that when I went out to Ashburn, I wanted to see what Johnny Newton was on. Well, he wasn't on shit. Johnny Newton wasn't on shit. He wasn't on shit. Now, I fully expect him to make the roster, but this is a guy that a lot of people consider the steal of the draft. When he made it out of the first round and Washington selected him in the second round of the 2025 draft. And I haven't necessarily seen him live up to that pedigree at all during his time with the Washington Commanders. Yeah, a couple of flashes and things of that nature, but he was getting whipped in the run game last year. He was getting dominated in the run game last year. And if he hasn't necessarily made the leap to at least be a rotational piece on this defensive line that is rebuilding itself day by day, the prospects aren't looking too great for Johnny Newton. Sticking with the defensive line, I think Javonte Jean-Baptiste had another strong day going against the twos and things of that nature. And you can only go against who's in front of you. So if you're a two and you whipping twos, then I have more confidence to see what you're going to do against ones instead of just chalking it up as, a talent deficit and that you're not winning that rep or anything of that nature. So that's why I'm encouraged to see what I'm liking what I'm seeing out of Javonte Jean-Baptiste. Kay Madrano and Jordan McGee, the two, they stuck out with me as two linebackers that were on the second team, and both of those guys are fast as hell. They fly balls to the walls. Kay Madrano damn near took off Austin Eckler's head today. I was like, damn, rookie, I ease up on my vet, bruh. He already talking about how he don't know how many more days he got left up in this thing. You got to ease up off my rook, bruh. But I'm glad that he's making those mistakes at 100% speed. He just got to learn how to control it. Jordan McGee's making calls at the line. I think Kay Madrano was in as a linebacker over a guy like Dom Hampton. Dom Hampton was running with the third team. So Dom Hampton might be fighting for a roster spot come training camp. Come preseason and these next couple of weeks in training camp, because I haven't necessarily seen him stand out. And, he was a 7th-round pick last year, so he doesn't have that super uber ultra high draft pedigree. He was brought in by Adam Peters, but, they're not going to hold on to you for too long if you're not producing to their liking. As I said, Jayden Daniels was Jayden Daniels. Made a couple of big throws in the line of fire with the defensive line draped all over his back. Had 2 touchdown passes to Austin Eckler and Deebo Samuel in the red zone. Then he scored in a 2-minute situation using his legs when the defensive line they got back there pretty quickly. But as I mentioned yesterday, you wanna hesitate chalking up some of these instant pressures that the defensive line are getting in training camp as sacks, because we don't want him to hit the quarterback. But we gotta remember, that's Jayden Daniels back there. And he reminded us in that 2-minute drill, finishing it off with about a 6-yard touchdown run on a scramble when nothing was there, running away from Bobby Wagner. Just showing you that the all-around game is there. Now, I touched on everything that's on the field. Now let's talk about the biggest news regarding the Washington Commanders off the field. Adam Schefter, the most world-renowned NFL reporter in the world. I don't know if that makes sense, but I said it. The most renowned NFL reporter in the world on Pat McAfee's show today said that he thinks that Terry McLaurin wants considerably more than the $33 million average annual value that DK Metcalf signed with the Steelers this offseason. Now, I know a lot of the fans in the base have been on Team Terry. I'm telling you guys this. If Adam Peters is telling the truth, if Adam Schefter is telling the truth, Terry McLaurin has lost his fucking mind. Terry McLaurin has lost his fucking mind. I told y'all 2 months ago, Terry McLaurin is not on blank check status. And while I love Terry McLaurin more than the next man, I had the 17 shirt on the other day. You see, I got the Step Brother shirt on today because I would love to see that relationship, evolve between Jayden Daniels and Terry McLaurin. But if Terry McLaurin is trying to hold this team hostage in hopes of getting his big last bag, I can't do it. I can't do it. I'm not on board for it. I'm not. I was a Commander fan long before I was a Terry McLaurin fan. That's not true because Terry McLaurin was a Redskin before a Commander. I was a Redskin fan long before I was a Terry McLaurin fan. I was a fan before him, and I'll be a fan after him. And while I love for him to finish his career with the Washington Commanders, I'm not going to let a barely top 10 wide receiver, if that, hold my franchise hostage. I'm not going to do it. Y'all know I'm a realist at the end of the day. I don't wear them burgundy and gold tinted lenses that y'all do. I will refuse to do that. If that is the case, like I said, it's reported. But what I got a little bit of a sense of is that, a couple of weeks ago, Terry McLaurin did his public negotiating at that press conference he had at Eastern Motors where he was saying, like, yeah, I'm disrespected. We ain't talked in about a month and all of that, right? Adam ain't reached out in a month. I feel disrespected. I don't know if I was going to hold out, which he ended up ultimately holding out. Terry, he was talking that talk, right? And I said then that was a chess move by Terry McLaurin. I think that this report from Adam Schefter on the Pat McAfee show was a chess move by Adam Peters. Now, I don't have anybody telling me anything. I don't have any inside information. But I think that it's more than just a coincidence that the day after Terry McLaurin reports to camp, everybody sees the glaze fest that's going on by fans where they're chanting Terry during practice while my man is chilling in the cold tub. I think it's more than just a coincidence that in the very next day, it's a report that he wants more than DK Metcalf's $33 million average annual value. I think that was our guy, Adam Peters, trying to get the fan base back on his side. Because he saw that glaze fest that I saw yesterday, or he heard it at the very least, and said, oh, man, I got to put an end to this shit. They treating this man like Jerry Rice. So I as I said back then, that was a chess move by Terry McLaurin, and I didn't mind it. Adam Peters just said, checkmate, motherfucker. Checkmate. So we'll see where this goes from here because Courtland Sutton from the Denver Broncos just signed a deal worth $23.5 million a year. And when it was mentioned that the two were working towards a deal, I said, what if this was the contract that Adam Peters was waiting on all along? These guys in NFL circles, especially front offices, they talk, right? They talk. And I think with his ties to Denver of a decade ago, I think Adam Peters might have more than just one tie, or at least one tie with the Denver Broncos to let him know what's going on with the wide receiver market and what Courtland Sutton is projected to make. Now, I'm not saying that Terry McLaurin isn't better than Courtland Sutton. Terry McLaurin is better than Courtland Sutton for Commander fans that don't process information and don't listen clearly. Terry McLaurin is better than Courtland Sutton, right? But you'd be a fool to think that there's other player comps in the NFL right now that are better comps for Terry McLaurin than Courtland Sutton and maybe like a Tyreek Hill, who's at $30 million. But are you going to sit here and tell me that Terry McLaurin is better than Tyreek Hill? I didn't think so. That'll do it for our Day 5 recap of training camp. Defense dominates again. Specifically the defensive line. And Jayden Daniels had himself a day. Despite that defensive line dominating. Good work on both sides. Your boy won't be there tomorrow. I'm tired. I feel like I done practiced the last 2 days. Sun fatigue is real. I'm about to go drink some Gatorade. I'm about to go give me some electrolytes so I can be ready to read these tweets tomorrow so I can give you day 6 coverage. I'll check in on y'all on the flip side. Peace.